This is the FAB-Racing British Mini Bikes Championship.
Hello and welcome. We are live in Rowrah. This is the 8th and final round of the FAB-Racing British Mini Bikes Championship, and we are live. And well, we've had a slight change to the schedule here. If you are just joining us live online on the Facebook live streams or on the FAB-Racing website, you may have heard that there's been a bit of a storm in the area overnight, which means there's been a bit of a change to the schedule, which ultimately means that we will be having a couple of races all on the Saturday. So we've rejigged things a bit, and as you may have already seen, if you have already seen the original schedule, which has now been changed to include the sidecars, which will be out first on track. Mini F1 sidecars out first on track, followed by the Moto team and Pit Bike 140, and then it's Pit Bike Open races, followed by the Senior Mini Motos, and then we will repeat that step all throughout the afternoon. We're expecting 3 races for the sidecars: Moto team and Pit Bike 140, Pit Bike Open and Senior Mini Motos. My name is Lester. I'm the presenter for this afternoon's festivities of racing here in the Cumbria kart circuit here at Rowrah. And it's great to have you along with us, and you can get in touch with us if you're tuned in live online this afternoon. We would certainly welcome your company and messages as well, and especially everybody here at the track as well. Joining us for this weekend, it is our commentator Alex Raby. Hello once again, Alex. Good to have you back with us.
Good afternoon and welcome to round 8 of the 2017 FAB-Racing British Mini Bikes Championship. It is a windswept Rowrah for this second visit to Cumbria in 2017, the 8th and final round of the championship, where the final titles are decided, because of course some of the categories were settled at round 7 in Glanigors in Wales, and that means that the remaining titles will be decided here this afternoon and also through the day tomorrow. 4 of the 9 categories, as Lester's already explained, will take place here this afternoon, with the remainder then split through the day tomorrow, with qualifying for those junior categories as well. Was considered that conditions being somewhat tricky here today. Of course, we've all heard plenty in the media of late about Storm Brian, which was supposedly going to be the most threatening name of a storm we've ever had. That storm has well and truly guaranteed some inclement weather here in Rowrah, and that's meant that the junior riders are going to take to the track tomorrow, although I must say that the weather conditions at this precise second are probably better than they've been for most of today. As we prepare to get underway with our first racing, we had wind sweeping rain in almost horizontally at one stage earlier on, and the riders were struggling to make it into some of the turns, particularly at the far end of the circuit, and they will be hoping that things will now get somewhat better as the action goes on. So, as I said, 4 of the 9 categories will be taking place here this afternoon, with the Mini F1 sidecars, the Moto Team and Pit Bike 140 category, the Pit Bike Open and Senior Mini Motos. And I'm joined throughout this weekend by Kiko, who's going to be joining me on the microphone to take you through all of the action. As I said, some of the categories decided at the last round in terms of the championship standings, but that does mean that the racing here today and also tomorrow will decide the remainder.
Absolutely, there's still 4 championships up for grabs, but that doesn't mean that the racing in the other categories is going to be any less or any worthwhile watching, because now the championship's over, everyone can have a little bit of a party and have a proper go at each other instead of playing it safe for championship points. So really the last round here at Rowrah of the 2017 Mini Bike Championship. Probably going to be one of the better ones this year, one of the best of the season.
Plus, of course, the riders have had an opportunity to see this track once already this season, their second visit here in 2017. So, as you said, they'll be familiar with the track, and I would also suggest that even in the categories that are decided, every race has its own podium and the honours around a podium. So, no reason that people won't be going hell for leather as ever. The riders have just come out onto the circuit now for the first race of the day. Remember, as I already said, we've got 4 different categories, or 4 different blocks of racing, 5 categories, with the Moto Team and Pit Bike 140s taking to the track together, and that means that effectively we're set for 12 races here this afternoon. So the 3 rounds of races that we always have for each of the categories, well, in the case of this weekend, just a slight change around to enable the adult classes to take place today and the junior categories to take place tomorrow. Means that we'll have all 3 rounds of the adult classes today and all 3 rounds of the junior categories here tomorrow. Mini F1 sidecars out onto track, as I already said, and well, this one is already wrapped up in terms of top spot. It's Mick Williams on the number 26 outfit, who is champion for 2017, yet to drop a point this season, and the real contest in the series standings overall is between Danny Stainer and Paul Qualters over second in the championship. Both of those outfits are guaranteed a place on the championship podium at the end of the season, but it's a question of which will take second and which will take third. Danny Stainer at the moment sits on 348 points in second, and Paul Qualters third on 333. Well, as I said, the outfits have made their way to the grid now and are lining up. Mick Williams was pipped to pole position in the qualifying session, and Adrian Ems came up with top spot, which is a bit of a surprise. He sits in 5th position in the championship standings coming into this one. As I've already said, the top 3 are already decided. It's a question of in which order they will finish in second and third, and Adrian Ems has duly got off to an extremely dramatic start, and we've got one sidecar that's already missing its passenger in the way down to turn 1, so the typical chaos of the Mini F1 sidecars is underway.
Indeed. I was just about to read out what positions that are still left to be decided. Adrian Ems, of course, starting from row 1, has a chance of 4th in the championship, but whatever's gone on there at the front of the grid has not worked out well as they go down towards the stewardesses for the first time.
Second and third positions pretty closely packed together as they go, as you said, up to the far end of the circuit. Right at the other end of the track, the stewardesses, they're making their way through now. As you'd expect, Mick Williams has duly taken a commanding advantage out in front. Well, he was pipped to pole position, but that hasn't stopped him from resuming his position, customary position out in front, and looking quite comfortable as well in top spot. Unbeaten in 2017, has had some real challenges in the last couple of rounds to his authority over the series, but in this race at least he looks fairly comfortable out in front, and it's going to be an extremely commanding margin because the rest of the pack is still filtering their way through Paddock Bend to complete lap number 1. It's Mick Williams then out in front by 6 seconds at the end of 1 lap, ahead of Paul Qualters, who moves through into second. Now, this is an important result in terms of the championship because remember that he needs to get the better of Danny Stainer, and has 15 points to make up in the real battle here for second in the championship standing. Still pretty closely packed further down the order, but the leader's broken well away.
Can I just say, Mick Williams' time there, his opening time from a standing start was quicker than from his front row time, and it was quicker than Adrian Ems' pole position time. Mick Williams, he may have wrapped this championship up, but he looks like he's going to wrap this race up in 2 laps. He's well clear.
No doubt about it. Mick Williams, the class of the field in the Mini F1 sidecars this season, and aided by, as I said, track conditions that are slightly better than they were, I suspect, during qualifying when the winds were playing a factor and it was raining and the rain was literally being blown into them. The rain seems to have eased off. We have still got standing water on the circuit, but Mick Williams, again, improving his pace on his second lap there, 1 minute 4.6. So Mick Williams looking very strong in the early part of this race, and the closest fight appears to be over third position at the moment between Paul Qualters and Mark Parker.
Indeed, Adrian Ems is lapping 4 seconds a lap quicker at the moment. Obviously, we're only 2 laps in, so it's very hard to read into how consistent and how reliable that information is. But with 4 laps to go, I'd say the first 2 positions are sorted, but that means it's all a bit of a desperate battle for the final podium position.
Well, Adrian Ems has done well, of course, to get back up to second. The reason that he's only 2.8 seconds clear of Paul Coulters, despite running over 4 seconds, as you said, faster than him on the previous lap, is that drama off the line. But he has now recovered a top 2 position, so he's back on the same row, if you like, as he has started on the grid. He started, of course, in pole position, but was off the back of the machine by the time they got down to turn number 1 and had to work hard from there. So Adrian Ems recovering second position. The fight's still over third place between Paul Coulters and Mark Parker, who were separated by 0.7 of a second at the end of the previous lap, and they are still extremely closely packed on the circuit. Paul Coulters, though, looking good to pick up the type of points he needs to move up into second position in the series standings. As they come back down into turn number 1 once again, just 1/10 of a second now between Paul Coulters and Mark Parker, and Parker 0.6 of a second faster on that previous lap is now looking for a way through as they stretch down to McRae's at the far end of the circuit. One of 2 sharp hairpins that the outfits will negotiate before making their way up to the far side of the circuit, and the Stuart S's still holding station for now. In third position it's Paul Coulters. The closest battle on the track still for third and fourth positions between Paul Coulters and Mark Parker. Parker having closed the gap on lap number 3, but unable to do anything about finding an overtake for now.
Yep, just 2/10 now, the gap between third and fourth. Really close as they came into the last bend on the last lap, but the gap has extended a little bit as they come down into the sunny corner here, sunny bend as they approach now. Coulters has got a little advantage over Parker, but with 2 laps to go now for the leader anyway, 2.5 for these guys that we're talking about, that could all change.
Parker eating up a little bit of ground there going into Paddock Bend. It looked as though Coulters was a little bit tentative coming in, and it's certainly Mark Parker who has the speed and has the advantage, but the outfits are wide enough that it's tough to make a move down the inside into turn 1, that right-hander, and Paul Coulters holds the racing line and holds the position as well. Parker's going to have to try something different because it's twice now that he's had a go at closing up through the final sequence of turns around Paddock Bend. 2 right-handers, remember, to see out the lap, and no real opportunity for him to come through. As I explained, 3 successive right-handers, difficult to find a way through there.
He may have to have a lunge at Sunny Bend. It's a corner where you're off the back of a straight through a right-hander, and you can really set something up through that right-hander, jam it down the inside into the left-hander, and then hopefully that'll be a block pass if you're Mark Parker. If not, it could all go wrong, and then it's a short burst up to the final turn, and Paul Coulters will definitely have a look back. As we were saying, the gap extends through that first part of the circuit, but now Mark Parker has closed them down.
And I think it would be a brave sidecar outfit to try and make a pass there. I think it's only about 1.5 outfits width across the track going into that sequence of turns. Mark Parker, just a little bit of a hair-raising run through Paddock Bend this time. He was squirming and squirrely coming round it, and I don't think that's going to give him certainly a run through the first sequence of turns, but we've already ascertained that it's through the latter stages of each lap that he is able to make back the ground. It's 0.5 a second the gap between third and fourth. Parker showing no signs of finding a way through so far, although he's got good run out of McRae's. He can't quite get alongside. Still holding third place is Paul Coulters. Meanwhile, the race leader coming round the final turn. Mick Williams will extend that unbeaten run in 2017. 22 races not out. Mick Williams with yet another checkered flag, and the fastest lap of the race as well. Adrian Ems doing well to recover from a disastrous start, quite honestly. It looked like a real bogged down run to the first turn, and Adrian Ems is going to come off the final turn to take second position nonetheless, and actually goes faster than Mick Williams on the final lap, 14 seconds down. Paul Coulters still holding off Mark Parker, who I think thought about Kiko's move down the inside there through that sequence of turns. He will want to have a go here, having sat on the tail of Paul Coulters throughout this race. Coulters holds down the inside line on Paddock Bend. That's all he needs to do. Parker is faster coming off the final turn, but there's no way through. 0.3 of a second separate them at the checkered flag, but it's Paul Coulters who holds on for third position, and that will move him second in the series standings behind Mick Williams, who of course already has the championship sewn up in 2017. So I suspect that may well settle our top 3 in the championship standings as well. You mentioned previously the battle for 4th position, well, with Mick Lee retiring from that race and Adrian Ems recovering through to 2nd place, that's a handy haul of points for him as well in the battle for 4th. But in terms of the championship podium itself, Paul Quarters moving 2nd behind Mick Williams, who leads, and I suspect that settles our 3 championship positions in the 2017 Mini F1 Sidecars category.
Adrian Ems up to 4th with them 20 points that he's just scored. So Adrian Ems moving up to 4th. Mick Lee's retirement only puts him 1 point away from the 4th that he just gave away. So Mick Lee and Adrian Ems going to go head-to-head for the remaining 2 races that they have today and this weekend.
And that will be the remaining interest in the Mini F1 sidecars, with the top 3 positions sealed. So 4th and 5th will go into the second race, separated by 1 point. And now we'll see how that stacks down through the remainder of the action as we move on now to the second race of the day, which is race number 1 in the Pit Bike 140 and Moto Team categories. Now we've got 2 very distinct and separate battles in the championship standings for the podium in the championship overall. Darren Anderson versus Will Howarth up front, separated by 35 points in the battle for the top 2 positions. Then a quite significant gap to a separate battle for 3rd and 4th, and the final step on the championship podium, Fraser Kinnaird and Keith Bolton separated by 18 points in that battle. Further down, various riders not too far away from one another, but in terms of the championship podium, which is obviously our focus this weekend, Darren Anderson versus Will Howarth for top spot, Fraser Kinnaird versus Keith Bolton for 3rd and 4th positions.
Yes, 2 separate battles. It will be interesting though, because if Fraser Kinnaird actually has a good enough opening race and Will Howarth has a poor enough opening race, well, those 2 could get head-to-head on for 2nd in the championship. So there's lots of different variations and dynamics to this race, and it's going to be one of the good ones to watch. As for the other side of this race, the Pit Bike 140, that has well and truly been won by Jamie King from James Blackburn, but Ben Pascoe is not giving up yet on that runners-up position. So in this race, lots and lots of battles to keep our eyes peeled on.
Worth mentioning those 2nd to 4th positions, because you've got James Blackburn, Ben Pascoe and Alex Vella all very much in the fight for 2nd in the championship mathematically. And you've also got Sam Clowes down in 5th position in the series standings. He is still, mathematically speaking, a podium contender. More realistically, Jamie King settled top spot, 143 points clear after a 57-point gain at round number 7. So Jamie King has the championship sewn up, as you said. James Blackburn leads Ben Pascoe by 18 points in the battle for 2nd. Alex Vella a little bit tailed off, as is Sam Clowes, but those 2 riders still in mathematical contention for a championship podium. Depending on the way results go in this one, they could drop out of contention, leaving us with a battle between James Blackburn and Ben Pascoe, which looks the most likely scenario. So we've gone through all the permutations in terms of the championships for the Moto Team and the Pit Bike 140 categories. And now it's time to join the action on track. James Blackburn, who is currently 2nd in the championship in the Pit Bike 140 category, lines up on pole position with Blake Ansell alongside. Remember, Blake picked up a brilliant 60 points at round number 7 on fine form to move into 10th position in the championship. So he will be one to watch as well. The second row of the grid featuring Ben Pascoe's got to try and somehow get past James Blackburn, who starts a row ahead of him. So Ben Pascoe in 3rd. Brandon Perrell alongside him had a disappointing round last time out at round 7, and that dropped him out of contention for the championship podium. He sits 6th in the series standings, and then it's Sam Clowes directly behind. So the top performers are the Pit Bike 140 regulars, and the Moto Team category also split in amongst them. It tends to be more challenging to keep track of Moto Team riders who are further down the order. The vast majority of the top performers in this split grid race will tend to be the Pit Bike 140 representatives. James Blackburn then on pole position alongside Blake Ansell, Ben Pascoe and Brandon Perrell on the second row, Sam Clowes and Ian Jackson on row number 3. Row 4 will feature Simon Clowes and Darren Anderson, and that's where you start to get the Moto Team regulars. Darren Anderson, the championship leader at the moment in terms of the Moto Team. Riders just settling in on the line. Takes a little bit longer in this category than it does perhaps in some others. We've got a 17 rider entry here, and the last of them has just made their way into the pit lane, so not sure what has transpired there, and whether that leaves us one rider down perhaps, I'm not entirely sure, but one of the runners has just peeled off and away into the pit lane.
Interestingly, James Blackburn lifted his visor up on his bike, on his helmet, so I'm wondering if he's suffering from some sort of misting up in the visor. He's doing it again there. Is he trying to listen
a nice
in,
blacked
maybe?
out visor. He might be struggling to see those lights. It wouldn't surprise me.
Slight delay to the start now.
Yeah, I wonder whether that, there was a bit of a lag in the riders making their way round to the grid. Then we had the number 33 of Simon Clowes, I think, just asking whether this was the actual race start, because he was waving his hands up in the air before we got clearance from the starting marshal. It does seem that we're now settled in, and they confirm that amongst themselves. They'll be watching the lights, and we will get underway as an unidentified object flies onto the circuit. Well, we've even had marquees flying onto the circuit here this weekend, such has been the wind, so no great surprise. We're now joined by the rider who, as I said, was having problems on the installation lap. He's just ridden out of the pit lane and to the back of the grid, and now we get underway. What an absolutely fine start that was from Brandon Perrell, who comes flying through from the second row of the grid, immediately making up positions there. A fantastic start from the number 146 bike of Brandon Perrell, who moves swiftly through. It's James Blackburn who got off to the best of starts, but Blake Ansell caught by surprise, I think, a little bit there by Brandon Perrell coming through from the second row of the grids.
That was at your peril. What a start that was. Someone just struggling around the back there. Can't see who that is from our commentary position, but out front, Blackburn leads, Perrell second, Ansell third, Pascoe fourth, and Ian Jackson completes the top five as they're at the Stewart S's.
Second and third positions the most closely fought after at the moment, as Blake Ansell attempts to recover position against Brandon Perrell. Second and third places, they're making their way through now towards the end of the opening lap, and in fact it looks as though Perrell has dropped back, so Perrell has ended up back in the fourth position from which he started this race at the far end of the circuit, out of our sight, as you said, from our commentary position here above race control. Well, the positions have effectively restored themselves, and Ben Pascoe is the big gainer of the opening lap as he comes through from fourth off the line to recover second place. It's James Blackburn then who leads the way. The current second place man in the Pit Bike 140 category now has his main championship rival 18 points behind him coming into this race, directly behind him on the circuit. Just a second separating the two championship rivals for second and third positions in the Pit Bike 140 category. Further back in the moto team, Fraser Kinnaird leads Darren Anderson, the top two in this race, and two of the top three in the championship directly behind one another on track as well. So plenty going on already in the early stages of this race as the riders in second and third positions, Ben Pascoe and Blake Ansell, come through the final technical sequence of turns, and separated by very little distance. I suspect that's where our closest race will be. Second and third places then Ben Pascoe and Blake Ansell. 0.4 of a second between them for second and third. New fastest lap, as you'd expect, from James Blackburn. Comes through in 1 minute, gains a bit over Ben Pascoe in second place. The gap up to 1.4 seconds as they go almost side by side there, coming through McRae's for second and third positions. Ben Pascoe is holding off Blake Ansell, who sits in third place. Brandon Perrell, having dropped back to fourth position, doesn't seem to have an answer, and he is dropping away from P4. It's Blackburn who leads then, Pascoe in second, Ansell in third, Brandon Perrell in fourth position, and Sam Clowes rounds out the top five as things stand, but he's already well back from the lead quartet. So the fight's still over second, Pascoe and Ansell. Ansell having been overhauled by Ben Pascoe, who did well to recover from fourth to second, and Brandon Perrell, after losing out on the opening lap, having made such a great start, he's now back up and running and on the pace of the two riders directly ahead of him. So we've got a bit of a train of riders all following one another now, but 2 seconds behind James Blackburn, who sets another new fastest lap of the race. He continues to up his pace. His rivals can't do the same. Pascoe now 2 seconds in arrears, but still holding on ahead of Blake Ansell. And closing up now is 4th and 5th positions. Sam Clowes gaining last lap around on Brandon Perrell for 4th position, and already looking for a way through as they come through Ardales up to the far end of the circuit. The race now is very much for that 4th and 5th position. Sam Clowes making his way through very well indeed from 5th position and closing up over this last lap or so. Still Clowes is on the attack then, looking for a way to come through. Meanwhile, Ansell has closed on Pascoe as well. Pascoe running a little bit wide there, coming into the final complex of turns, but still no opportunity for Blake Ansell to come through for now. We've got 2 battles in one here, because we've got the race for 2nd and 3rd and the race for 4th and 5th. Around the outside line goes Sam Clowes, but he can't quite get there for the moment. New fastest lap of the race, and it's from Sam Clowes, the rider who I mentioned there on that previous lap as being on the march, closing in on the 2 riders directly ahead of him. Brandon Perrell also gaining on Blake Ansell. We've got 4 riders now separated by little more than a second, and Clowes makes his move down the inside and through at McRae's, and up goes Sam Clowes into 4th position ahead of Brandon Perrell. And it's only a matter of time now before he starts to make further progress, as he has set the new fastest lap of the race on that previous lap and made 1 pass already. The 2 riders up ahead of him are going side by side, and after the next position, which is 3rd place of course, Blake Ansell holding that ahead of Sam Clowes now, who has moved through. Ansell also attempting to gain on Ben Pascoe, and still it's a pack of 4 riders and a faller. Ben Pascoe's gone down just ahead of them. Blake Ansell moves to 2nd. 3rd place now is Sam Clowes. Clowes may have an opportunity to take 2nd here. They're sliding coming off of Paddock Bend on the slippery inside line. Clowes didn't really get the run there, and Brandon Perrell attempted to make an overtaking manoeuvre around the outside down into turn 1, couldn't do so. Ben Pascoe, having fallen, has now remounted and comes over the line in 5th position, but 10 seconds back from that battle that was a 4-way battle for 2nd. It's now a 3-way fight for 2nd position. James Blackburn leads then by 4.5 seconds ahead of Blake Ansell in 2nd. Sam Clowes now attempting to hold off the challenger Brandon Perrell, who's trying to come back at him, all the while negotiating lap traffic and attempting to close down Blake Ansell, who holds P2. Blackburn, Ansell and Clowes the top 3. Perrell in 4th position right with them. We've got 3 riders separated by 0.3 of a second last time over the line for 2nd, 3rd and 4th places. Ben Pascoe out of contention after a fall, just coming through the technical area of the circuit. We saw earlier this season that when there were incidents, when there were crashes, that's exactly where it was. Just coming through that sequence, that chicane, a right and a left-hander, it gets narrow. There's a big, heavy, thick curb there as well for the riders to slip on if they try to go too tight, and perhaps that's what happened to Ben Pascoe. He certainly lost it coming off the exit of that turn and is now back up and running, but off the pace that he showed earlier in the race, and now only 0.7 of a second ahead of Ian Jackson, who sets a new personal best on lap number 6 and gains on him. We have a fight on our hands for 5th position. We also have a fight on our hands for 2nd place. Sam Clowes really going at it now, attempting to close down Blake Ansell. It looks to me as though Ansell has the advantage in a straight line, and Sam Clowes is held at bay for now. Was that a clap of thunder I saw overhead? It's absolutely astonishing, the weather conditions here. We've had plenty of wet weather this weekend, but what a race it's turning out to be for 2nd, 3rd and 4th positions, and it was a 4-way battle earlier in the race until we lost Ben Pascoe.
Yeah, Brandon Perrell's also dropped off the back of them 2 now, so it's all down to Blake Ansell and Sam Clowes. Clowes moves up, he's closing, he just hasn't been able to find a way through. It's all kinds of things going on down at turn 7, Sunny Bend. Oh dear, as they go into the final corner at Paddock Bend. It's all getting a little bit tight. There's back markers getting involved there as well.
That's further back, of course, for 5th and 6th positions, and that was Ben Pascoe being overtaken by Ian Jackson. Jackson finding a way through then at the expense of Ben Pascoe, who's relegated down to 6th position. So that's the move I suspected was going to come, since Jackson had set a new personal best on the previous lap, and Pascoe, since his fall, has dropped about 2 or 3 seconds off the pace that he was showing previously. Ansell versus Clowes hasn't really changed. Clowes seemingly struggling in a straight line, and that's giving an opportunity to Blake Ansell to to pull away. Klaus then making up ground again in the twisty stuff, and here it is again. Klaus just gaining right on the tail of Blake Ansell, but the moment they get onto a straight, Ansell slips away and holds on to that second position. Klaus really going at it here, coming off paddock bend. He's gone wider, attempts the cutback to get down to the inside line, but no straight line advantage and no way through for now.
No, not yet, but there's a lot of twisty points at this circuit, so if he is close enough, if he's even 2 or 3 bike lengths closer down the straight, he will definitely have a go into one of the corners, one of the twisty corners towards the end of the lap. The annoying thing for him is that coming out of paddock bend, there's a short run to the line, and it might be a big enough run to the line for Blake Ansell to take it back off Klaus. That battle is going down to the last lap, but this rain, it's got a lot heavier, and the times have started to go slightly south now. They were getting quicker, they are going slower now.
Yeah, the wet weather is always going to play a part in the racing this weekend. The wind as well, of course. The wind ends up behind you, you're all right, but if it's blowing across you, then you're going to struggle to make it into some of the turns. At the moment, the focus is on the battle for second position between Blake Ansell and Sam Klaus. Just to recap, James Blackburn sprinted away from the start. By the end of the opening lap, he was already a second clear. He now leads by 4 seconds ahead of Blake Ansell in second position and Sam Klaus in third. The top 3 lapping within a 1/10 of a second of one another for now, and that means that the gap that has stood at 0.2 of a second between Blake Ansell and Sam Klaus for some time still stands at that 2-second mark, 0.2 of a second mark rather, as they make their way now through McRae's up towards Iredale's. The battle still for second and third positions. Both of them are making their way through lap runners, and that presents another tricky circumstance in the wet, because if you end up off what is a very narrow drying line, you can really find yourself in trouble.
Absolutely, and if you have to go offline, not only are you going offline, but your braking points change, your corner speed entrance change. Oh, I thought we was going to have a pass there into Sunny Bent, but no, all change, all
and
the same.
That's the battle for 10th position.
Place.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Right.
That's Lewis Patrickson, who is just over losing getting a lap put on him by James Blackburn. So that was Lewis Patrickson coming through the final turn, with Blackburn coming through to lap. Blackburn now up into the top 10 in terms of lapped runners. That's the extent of his pace. Patrickson 4 seconds a lap off the current pace being set by the rider in 10th position. In terms of the battle for second and third, no change. Sam Klaus dropping off a little bit on that previous lap, and I wonder whether that's a little bit more caution, as you said, in the rain and the wind.
A lot more caution. There's only a couple of laps to go, unless he's psyching himself up for a big last lap attack, which I don't think he is. That is, I think he's settling for the third place. Brandon Perrell has absolutely settled for fourth place. He's nearly 13 seconds back at the podium. So I think your first 3 are going to remain the same, unless there's a mistake from one of them.
Got to focus on the Moto Team category as well. Scott Doodson leading at the moment in the Moto Team class. He's 7th in scratch ahead of Fraser Kinnaird. An important result for Kinnaird in the championship, and in his fight with Keith Bolton in third in the series standings, and he actually leads the championship leader Darren Anderson, who is in 9th place, which is third in class. So not a good race here for Darren Anderson, but he is picking up more important points, and he will still remain the leader in the Moto Team category at the end of race 1 here at round number 8. The leaders are into the final lap, and just to give lie to the seemingly worsening weather conditions, I'm astonished, because as you said at the start of the race, it was more or less dry. We had even a little bit of sun showing. It's been raining, spitting, thunderclaps and wind, and James Blackburn's just gone out and on the penultimate lap set a new fastest lap of the race and dips under a minute for the first time. A 59.8. James Blackburn leading the way by 5 seconds, and it's going to be a fairly comfortable march to the checkered flag here for him.
Yeah, Blackburn setting the first sub-minute lap of the day across all classes. I don't think we've seen a time under a minute, but he's on his way home now. Blackburn is across the line, and that is a victory for him off what was the front row.
James Blackburn takes the checkered flag then ahead of Blake Ansell, who holds on from Sam Klaus. Klaus dropping half a second a lap in the closing 3 laps to finish 1.5 seconds further back. Brandon Perrell now just making his way through the final sequence of turns, and he will take the 4th position. Coming over the line now to take P4 then. Brandon Perrell, in the end, well back from the top 3. We had a 4-rider squabble for second place in the early part of the race. We lost Ben Pascoe early on. Is that one of the Moto Team runners?
They're okay,
and I wonder what... I can't quite see from our commentary position up here who that was who went down. I was just saying that we had a 4-rider race early on. A fall for Ben Pascoe scotched his battle. He ended up in 6th position. Brandon Perrell dropping away. Ian Jackson making an overtake for P5. So Jackson rounds out the top 5 finishers in 5th place. Brandon Perrell in 4th, 3 seconds up ahead of him. But the podium positions held by James Blackburn, Blake Ansell and Sam Klaus in the pit bike 140 category. And I did say I thought that was a Moto team runner who'd come down, and I think it was the class leader, Scott Dootson, who came down in the final sequence of turns. The advantage for him is that he was on the lead lap still, so at the moment he's showing as classified 1 lap down, but we'll await official confirmation before saying anything there. He certainly deserved a top 3 finish. He was the leader of the class until the final sequence of turns. Down he goes. Darren Anderson, the championship leader, ends up taking the class victory in Moto team ahead of Fraser Kinnaird. And just to confirm my suspicions, off drops the early race leader in the Moto team class. So after his fall, Scott Dootson will not be a classified finisher in that race, and that will hand 3rd position by my reckoning in the Moto team class to Alistair Kinnaird. So a decent result for him in that one. Race number 1 in the pit bike 140 and Moto team categories. Plenty to get our teeth into there.
Yeah, indeed. I think Dootson just lost the rear end coming through the fast left-hander at the halfway through the final lap there. That's a really unfortunate of all the parts of the race to do it in, and you can see the checkered flag from where he is. What a shame for him. But he's talking to a marshal now. There's a couple of riders stopped there as well. I think they're going to give him a lift back to the paddock, but
unfortunately for him, of course, being in sight of the checkered flag doesn't score you points. As he was the last of the Moto team runners on the lead lap, it seems a little bit harsh that he ends up as a non-classified runner, but riders are required to take the checkered flag, so that's why he ends up dropping off the screens altogether there.
So that's a good thing. It could be a lot worse. That bike doesn't look too damaged for where I am. He's off back into the pit lane now. So a shame there for Dootson, but he'll be back out later, of course, for another race.
And of course, what you're quite rightly remembering is that we've got to think about this race weekend in the context of 3 races. He's still got 2 more opportunities here this afternoon, with all 3 rounds of races in these 4 adult categories taking place here this afternoon. So now we move on upon completion of the 2nd of the round 1 races. And we're moving on to the Pit Bike Open category, a much smaller entry this weekend in the Pit Bike Open category than we've become accustomed to. A total of 36 riders have taken part in the Pit Bike Open category of the championship in 2017, but only 6 of them taking part here today, which is unexpected, I think, to some extent, because riders all the way down to 13th in the championship standings are still in contention for 3rd position on the championship podium. So normally when it's a smaller entry in the last round, you say, well, that's because they don't have an opportunity to take a championship podium. 3rd place is still very much up for grabs here this weekend in the Pit Bike Open class, even if Max Cook is confirmed as champion and Charlie Nesbitt confirmed as runner-up after his maximum scores at rounds 4 and 6 earlier on in this campaign. So the riders making their way round towards the grid then in race number 1 in the Pit Bike Open category. Max Cook and Charlie Nesbitt, the top 2 in the series standings, as I've already said, and it was Charlie Nesbitt who took pole position by 0.7 of a second over Brandon Payne, who'll line up alongside him on the front row. Brandon Payne with 4 appearances in the 7 rounds so far this season. The second row of the grid will feature Callum Wybrow and Elliot Pinson, and then row 3 is Craig Walker and Luke Coggins. Callum Wybrow, who currently sits 5th in the championship standings, then will have an opportunity to move up into a position on the championship podium. Will Howarth sat in 3rd place in those championship standings coming into round number 8 on 178 points, but not taking part, so that enables riders directly behind him, Callum Wybrow, as I've already said, to try and move up into third place. And he will have to hold off the attentions of Brandon Payne, but that's where the focus is here, really, in the battle for third position in the championship standings.
Charlie Nesbitt, pole position, the 2016 Motor Star champion, of course, in British Superbikes, having a laugh and a joke down there with the people watching on from just next door to us, actually.
So we got 7 riders lining up on the grid. We only had 6 qualified, so a last-minute addition to the lineup as we get underway with a predictably fast start for Charlie Nesbitt. I think that's Jack Walters, who is the additional rider that I didn't call on the grid there. So Jack Walters having not set a time, but he is joining the group, which is important for his championship, of course, because he's another of those riders at the moment in 6th position in the championship standings, who is still in mathematical contention and very much in contention, actually, quite honestly, for third place in the series standings. Watch out for Callum Wybrow then, watch out for Jack Walters, and watch out for Brandon Payne. Those are the 3 key riders in this lineup in terms of the fight for third position in the championship standings. They sit in 5th, 6th and 8th in the points table respectively. At the moment on track, 2nd and 3rd positions the most closely fought after. Charlie Nesbitt already gapping the rest of the field.
Yeah, this is exactly what he did in his Motor Star Championship. Yeah, he just walked off with it right from the word go, and he's doing it again here. Great stuff to see Charlie. He's been in the CEV Championship, the progression all the way up to Junior World Championship level for Charlie, but that is not where he's stopping. He will be surely moving on to bigger and better things. But great to see he's back supporting grassroots as well, but he's well out in front at the moment. Brandon Payne, Callum Wybrow in 3rd. Callum Wybrow, like you say, in contention for that 3rd place with no Will Howarth and no James Rose.
And Callum Wybrow looking for a way through on Brandon Payne. He was faster on that previous lap and attempting to find his way through. For the moment, though, it's Brandon Payne who holds on. The advantage of having started, of course, on the front row of the grid, whereas Callum Wybrow was behind him, of course, on the 2nd row, and at the moment still directly behind him. How long will he wait, looking at the tail end of the machine ahead? He's also got to watch out for Elliot Pinson, who is right behind as well, and Jack Walters attempting to come through. But at the moment it's 2nd, 3rd and 4th positions that are most closely packed together on the circuit as they come round to complete lap number 2, and Charlie Nesbitt sets a 58.7 to open his gap to 3.4 seconds. Brandon Payne still only with a 1/10 of a second advantage over Callum Wybrow, and Elliot Pinson now going with them, the 2nd fastest rider on the track on lap number 2, and that means the gap really has closed up now for 2nd, 3rd and 4th positions.
Callum Wybrow seems to get brilliant drive coming out of the sunny bend towards Paddock Bend. He seems to really be able to close up and pull away from that challenge from Elliot Pinson. At the moment, though, we're looking, it looks like it's all the same. Charlie Nesbitt has broken.
Pinson back in that order again, so after the efforts of Brandon Payne and Callum Wybrow knocking spots off one another, and we've seen 2 overtaking manoeuvres already in the last 2 laps. So which of these 2 will it be who takes 2nd place? They've all upped their pace, aside from Charlie Nesbitt, who now knows he has a comfortable margin that he can manage to the checkered flag. 4.5 seconds with 8 laps to go. The next 5 riders directly behind him all set new personal bests on lap 4.
Elliot Pinson closes up in the braking areas down into I think it's at turn 5 and up into Iredale's, the next corner. He's really good on the brakes, but he just gets stretched in them long straights, or the longer straights. He's back with them a bit now, though. It was a 2-man scrap coming into this lap here. It is now back to a 4-man, but like I say,
separated by just a second, that trio, as Charlie Nesbitt comes over the line to set a new fastest lap of the race. That's then bettered by Wybrow, and that's then bettered by Elliot Pinson. So you said that it was becoming a 3-rider battle again. Pinson dropped off a little bit while Payne and Wybrow were passing and repassing one another. Well, for a second, the gap to Callum Wybrow, who's less than a 1/10 of a second behind Brandon Payne, and they're almost side by side coming into Iredale's as Pinson tries to get the better of Wybrow. But as you said, Wybrow's got really good traction coming off the turns. He accelerates, he opens a gap and clears Pinson once again. It's on the 2 longest straights coming off McRae's and coming off Iredale's, the 2 longest straights on the circuit, that Callum Wybrow is able to open that gap again. It's in the final sector that Elliot Pinson looks strongest.
I think Pinson's gone down, because that scrap is now down to 2 riders. Has Pinson gone down, or is it
No,
Wybrow?
it's not Pinson, it's Brandon Payne, I think. Charlie Nesbitt comes over the line to lead, and it's going to be Callum Wybrow coming through in second place, and Elliot Pinson coming through in third. So as I said, Brandon Payne has gone down somewhere on the circuit, but I'm not sure where actually.
The stewardesses.
From our well, it must be, because that's the only part of the circuit that we can't see from our commentary position. He is back up and running now, but somewhere on that lap he has dropped it, and that's cost him 11 seconds or so. He's 11.5 seconds now behind Elliot Pinson, 17.8 seconds behind the leader. So Brandon Payne's chance of a podium takes a nosedive at the half race distance as he comes down on lap number 6
versus Pinson.
And Jack Walters, of course, would be the first rider to get swallowed up and lapped, of course, after his fall earlier in the race, coming through Paddock Bend and ending up way too deep and crashing into the outer curb, actually, that curb that goes up the side of the hill there, coming off the exit of Paddock Bend. You returned our focus to this battle for second. Elliot Pinson gaining fractionally on that previous lap, another 1/10 of a second eaten up, but there's not much more left to gain. It's less than half a second, the gap between the two of them. They're all
into the stewardesses, but that battle for second, Wybrow and Pinson are going head to head here. There's a slight gap now back to Pinson. Maybe Wybrow's got it.
Personal best for Wybrow and Pinson on the final lap, but Elliot Pinson, each time he gained ground, he could only gain a 1/10 or so, and each time Wybrow gained ground, it was half a second. It was the consistency that Pinson lacked, and in the end he comes in 3/10 of a second behind Callum Wybrow. Charlie Nesbitt takes the checkered flag then by 5 seconds ahead of Callum Wybrow in second. Elliot Pinson gets third place, and both of those riders gaining from a fall from Brandon Payne earlier in the race. Another fall from Brandon Payne late in the race ends up dropping him from 4th to 6th. Craig Walker takes 4th position then. Luke Coggins will be 5th. Brandon Payne in 6th position, the first of the lap runners, ahead of Jack Walters, who likewise went down in the early stages of the race. Race 1 in the Pit Bike Open category.
Indeed, and that has a bit of an effect on the championship standings. Callum Wybrow bagging an extra 20 points. That puts him 4th. So, on 171 points, he is now just 7 down on Will Howarth. So the battle for 3rd is closing up.
Effectively, you can ignore the riders who aren't here without being disrespectful. They don't have an opportunity to pick up points. There's only 7 riders taking part in the class, so Will Howarth and so on who aren't participating realistically out of contention. Jack Walters will have dropped back as a result of that one. He was only 3 points behind Callum Wybrow coming into that race, but with a 7th position finish, that won't have done his chances any good. Brandon Payne likewise with that pair of falls, only taking 6th position. And with so few riders in the lineup, that means that making big points gains is really tough, and big points gains is what Brandon Payne and Jack Walters are now going to need in the remaining 2 races in the Pit Bike Open category.
Indeed, Craig Walker seems like he's got a problem. He's just pedalling the bike along there with his feet, but he's the last rider to go into pit lane. But that was a good race, and I'm looking forward to the rest of them across the weekend. I think it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out on top. I think Nesbitt's got the race pace and all of them. Interestingly, he set his fastest lap on the last lap as well, the fastest lap of the race on the last lap. So Nesbitt, I think he's sandbagging a bit because he doesn't need to push on as much as he does, and in this wet weather, in these wet weather conditions, why would you want to push on?
Incidentally, the rider struggling on that final lap there was Luke Coggins, who has DNF'd on the final lap, so I'm not sure whether it was a fall or a mechanical, but Luke Coggins ends up failing to complete the final lap, and that bumps Brandon Payne and Jack Walters up, so that's going to be a bit of a favour for those two in terms of championship points, as we now turn our attentions to the senior mini motos, the last of the round 1 races here at round 8 of the 2017 Cool Fab Racing Mini Bike British Championship. Look at the lineup for this one. Will feature Nick Bennett and Brandon Payne on the front row, Mark Payne and Josh Darter on row 2, Justin Bainbridge and Matt Birkin on row 3, and Ryan Grant completing the lineup from 7th position. In terms of the championship standings, it's Will Howarth already confirmed as victor, 87 points, an unassailable championship lead out in front coming into the final round, but riders all the way down to 10th, still in contention for 2nd and 3rd positions in the series standings, currently occupied by Matt Birkin, who, as I said, starts in P6 on the grid, and Mark Payne, who starts in P3. So Payne with an opportunity to try and get the better of Matt Birkin here and try and gain some ground in the championship standings as well.
Indeed, and that's what it's going to be all about, really. In these conditions, anything can happen. We've seen already that You can drop out of the top 4 if you want. Well, not if you want, but if you do crash, you can effectively have a bit of a disadvantage on your overall race.
That's not a bad point, because I was saying that in lineups of only 7 riders, it's pretty tough to make up big points hauls, but it's easy to lose big points hauls, and I think that's what you're expressing there. If you end up having a fall in wet conditions, you can lose an absolute truckload of points. On the other hand, actually making ground is more difficult, so being consistent is the key to that. So the riders coming round to the grid now for race 1 in the senior mini motos category. Nick Bennett doing a great job to make it onto pole position, just a couple of tenths of a second ahead of Brandon Payne. Then there was a bit of a gap. Now, the pace differentials in qualifying were absolutely huge. I don't expect that to be the case when we get to race time. I don't think they were all putting it on the line in the qualifying session in terms of determining their grid position, so we could see some changes from the grid. I mean, Justin Bainbridge has had a couple of good rounds, particularly round number 4 earlier in the season at Tattershall, as we now come into positions on the grids.
Just back
the riders. Sorry, I think the riders just attempting to sort of dry out their grid positions a little bit by spinning the back wheels on the line, which caught my attention. Go on, Kiko.
Just to come back to your championship points discussion we had earlier on in that warm-up lap, it does limit how much damage can be done, though, because if you do finish last, in this race that's 9 points. In another race, when there's 20 riders, you know, you could end up having no points. So there is pros and cons of this.
Here we go then with race number 1 in the senior mini motos getting underway. Looked like Matt Birkin got a decent run. Oh, they're 3 abreast into the first turn. The pole sitter's off. Nick Bennett runs off the circuit entirely. They're going to both take the shortcut and back up and running, but Nick Bennett has gone to the back. They went 3 abreast. Nick Bennett was trapped in the middle. He got squeezed and was lucky to avoid a high side, quite honestly, because he had the wobble on. There was plenty of chatter down to the first turn, and Bennett got caught up there with Brandon Payne, and I think Mark Payne as well, the 3 of them coming into the first turn, and the Paynes just slammed into him, and Bennett caught them the wrong way, and off he went. So it's about recovering positions. Now, we did say, or you did explain, that you could only drop as low as 9 points, but if you end up with a DNF, then you can drop a whole lot more than that, and we were lucky not to have one right in the first turn.
We have a yellow flag down at the Stuart S's. Someone's gone down. Can't see who. That will flash up on our timing monitor when we come to. He's back up, whoever it is.
Nick Bennett back up into 4th position, has worked his way through well, and they're line abreast from 2nd down to 4th now. Bennett closing right in, looks to the outside line coming off Paddock Bend, can't make his way through for now. So it's Mark Payne who leads, 2 seconds advantage over Brandon Payne in 2nd. I think that's Justin Bainbridge who we saw going down at the Stuart S's. He's just making his way through Paddock Bend now, but he's literally trickling round. So the top 5 have broken well clear. And we've got another faller at the far side of the circuit again. That's just slightly too far out of our line of sight. I wonder whether that's Josh Data, but I'm not quite sure. From this distance away, it's really impossible to tell. The riders making their way up to the far side of the circuit then, and Nick Bennett won't believe his luck, because the others are getting out of the way for him as he's attempted to recover from last position. Well, if you were wondering why the junior riders weren't taking to the track today, then these mini moto categories are letting you know why.
Exactly. And this comes back to the championship thing. Justin Bainbridge has now made up a position on Josh Data, who currently trudges off in the mud.
Yeah, I think I might have made a mistake about Josh Data. He does seem to be struggling for pace, Data, but I don't think it was Data who'd actually run wide, so sorry for that, Kiko.
Okay, throw us under the bus anytime.
Yeah, no, I've absolutely done that. I think it was certainly Brandon Payne who has ended up further down the order. Josh Data actually held 3rd position, but coming off of the final complex, he was revving it as hard as he could, and it wasn't going anywhere, so Matt Birkin has picked up 3rd position. Brandon Payne is now back up and running. He comes over the line in 6th, so behind Justin Bainbridge, who was the other faller. We had Nick Bennett go off the circuit at turn 1. We had another rider go off the circuit at turn 1 as well, and that really has created a huge disparity between... There's only 6 riders still running, but they're really spaced out now, aside from the battle for 3rd. Josh Data having dropped behind Matt Birkin, and we'll see if that mechanical problem continues to unfold. told, it just looked like he was getting no pickup whatsoever as he came off the turn. He's dropped back massively on this lap, Josh Data, so he's in trouble in terms of mechanical situation.
Yeah, I think he was looking down on his bike actually coming out the Stuart S's, so there's definitely a problem. He's very slow coming out of Sunny Bend. He's pushing it on as much as he
It's the uphill. It doesn't like the hill. For whatever reason.
This isn't a bad race considering there's only 6 riders out there given our time in monitor.
Quite right.
So,
quite right. Well, we're assuming it was a fall, but we know that he's been struggling with mechanicals. So
it may well be.
So it may be a mechanical DNF. As up front, that gap looks fairly static between Mark Payne and Nick Bennett. Payne responding well on lap number 4. Let's see what he's done on lap 5. If anything, I'd say that gap has opened up a little bit as they come around. Oh, and Bennett's gone down. Nick Bennett goes down, and he manages to keep one leg on the bike, but that's very uncomfortable. He will have. He'll feel that in certain organs as Nick Bennett now gets back up and running, but he's dropped 11 seconds back from Mark Payne. That was uncomfortable for a gentleman, I would suggest, the way he fell there, coming off Paddock Bend and got himself caught up. Incidentally, Josh Data is back up and running now, so whether it was a mechanical or what, I don't know. He's got Justin Bainbridge directly behind him on the circuit, but I think Bainbridge is a lap up. Data is a lap down on him, so Justin Bainbridge is now the last of the runners on the lead lap in 4th position.
Unbelievable. And what did we say? He was down in 6th at the start of this race. He was down. Someone's gone down at turn 2.
That's Data again. It's Data again.
This time he has
down through the chicane under yellow flags. He's back up and running though. But do you know what? We've curse of the commentator before the race. We were talking about DNFs being key in terms of avoiding those so as not to drop points. Brandon Payne, 4th in the championship standings, has DNF'd here. Ryan Grant is who's 9th in the championship standings, another of those riders who was still in mathematical contention for 2nd place in the series standings. He's out of the action. Josh Data and Justin Bainbridge have both suffered falls. They're still running though, and that's going to be worth championship points. Indeed,
and it just goes to show that anything can happen. Like we said, Justin Bainbridge was well down the order, but he's picked up into 4th, and you know what, we've got 2 laps to go. That's 2 laps for a bit more action. Mechanical.
I believe that is Mick Lee. I think the yellow outfit is Mick Lee, but we'll wait and see. When they've lined up and he's the only one missing, we'll know. So we've also got a vacant slot, 6th on the grid, so that confirms it for me. Mick Lee stuck up at the far end of the circuit. We'll see whether he gets it running and rejoins the back of the grid to try and continue in this race.
That is a disaster for Mick Lee, though.
Of what happened in race number 1. Mick Williams taking the checkered flag by 14 seconds over Adrian Ems, and those two will line up on the front row once again. We are down to 6 runners only as we get underway with race number 2 in the Mini F1 sidecars.
Yeah, Williams leading through the first couple of bends, and it's Adrian Ems in 2nd place. It is status quo really from the grid down into McRae's. No dramas as of yet, but Mick Lee 4th, 5th now in the championship. If Adrian Ems can get another podium, that really puts his 4th place challenge in doubt, because that will be another DNF.
Change of positions for 3rd and 4th. Simon Ibbotson making it through. Paul Qualters dropping down to 4th position, and Qualters looking vulnerable in that 4th place now from John Hosker, I think that is, trying to make his way through down the inside at the far end of the circuit. So it's all changed for 3rd, 4th and 5th positions, but as you said, no doubt about the top 2 positions. Mick Williams is away and gone. Adrian Ems on the number 76 outfit directly behind, sliding as they come through the final twisty technical sequence of turns, and well, he managed to keep it in the right direction, which remember, he had to come through from the back first time out after losing it on the line. This time around at the end of lap number 1, he's up in 2nd position, but 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th all very closely packed together. As I called it earlier, Paul Qualters just dropping 1 place on that previous lap from his grid position.
The rain really has just started to come down, and we can see on our commentary box window that we've just been pepper sprayed by a load of water here. But that battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, Mark Parker off the line, he must have creeped about 10 inches forward, because I think it was him and Paul Qualters, they were both moving forward, so quite rightly they should be in that battle for 3rd too.
Ibbotson, Qualters, Hosker and Parker in that order at the end of the opening lap. Qualters really struggling for speed coming off Iredale's. He was under pressure there last lap around. He's under pressure again heading up to the far end of the circuit in the Stuart S's. Qualters holding on for the moment in 4th position, but Hosker is the outfit on the move, the number 127 outfit, attempting to find a way past. No way past for the moment, although just as I say that, Paul Qualters pulls up. So is that a mechanical for Paul Qualters? Hand of the passenger raised, and normally that's the internationally recognised symbol for I'm out of the action. Curtains. Paul Qualters losing out then. Also, we've got the fight for 5th position. What's 5th position is now 4th position, of course, after Paul Qualters' retirement, and Parker is only just ahead of John Hosker. So that means that Parker has moved up quite dramatically at the expense both of Qualters and also of Hosker. Plenty going on there on lap 2.
Absolutely. Mick Williams, though, well off and running. It's so good to watch him through the turns and through the really fast kinks towards the back of this track. He's just so graceful, so on it everywhere. As we watch him now coming through, fantastic stuff. He's well out ahead, 2 seconds a lap nearly quicker than anyone else. Adrian Ems likewise, though, is about 3 seconds a lap quicker than the next person. We've got someone down. There's someone watching on down there. I think that's just someone.
Is that still Mick
Lee, who's mired down there and cut off from civilization down at the bottom end of the circuit there? But the battle for 3rd and 4th has kind of reversed itself again. It's not too exciting at the moment. They have spaced out, so at the moment, Mark Parker
settled.
Yes,
settled is the word. Settled. I think 4th position, but not too far behind 3rd place either. As we come through to complete lap number 3, it's Mick Williams who leads the way, 7 seconds up on Adrian Ems. Simon Ibbotson sitting in 3rd, half a second now clear of Mark Parker. Parker setting a new personal best on the previous lap, gains 1.2 seconds on Simon Ibbotson in 3rd. A word, of course, when we're talking about the style and the finesse of these outfits, it's also worth not overlooking the efforts of the passenger and dexterity of the passenger against the wind, trying to balance the machine as they come through the turns. And passengers in sidecars often get overlooked, but the work that they're doing is the most physical as well, leaning over from one side to the other, and as I said, keeping the balance of the machines in these tricky windy conditions is no mean feat either. So fair play to the number 26 outfit piloted by Mick Williams that leads the way at the end of lap number 4, quite comfortably so as well, ahead of Adrian Ems in 2nd position. Still Simon Ibbotson's number 46 outfit in 3rd, and that battle appears to have settled down. Watched on, of course, by the 2 retired outfits, piloted by the Mick Lee, the number 44 outfit at the far end of the circuit, and Paul Qualters, number 25 outfit that retired to the pits on lap number 2.
Things have really got close between Ibbotson and Parker now. Ibbotson looked behind him and they had a really slow run out of Paddock Bend onto the home straight. So Mark Parker, with 4 laps to go, will now be looking at opportunities. Where is he stronger? He will be looking to see. He's looking down the inside. Is he going to go through Iredale's? Don't think so. Did he get through? We're going to find out in a moment.
And it looks as though we may have a mechanical retiree.
Yeah, someone's pulled toss to the side.
Oh, is it Mick Williams?
I
think it's Mick Williams.
It is.
It's going to be a first defeat of the season, and it's going to be as a result of a DNF. Would you believe it? So they're dropping like flies. Mick Williams is going to drop his first points of the campaign, unbeaten in 22 races, but with 3 laps remaining, Adrian Ems crosses the line as the race leader and looks set for the checkered flag. Quite a significant margin ahead of Simon Ibbotson. That's going to promote Mark Parker's 230 outfit into 3rd place, and John Hosker is now within touching distance of the top 3 and slowing up, coming off Paddock Bend. Simon Ibbotson, but not quite getting through Mark Parker. Ibbotson swerved across the circuit. A very aggressive move for a straight, quite honestly. But Ibbotson managed to hold on. 0.2 of a second up on Parker, and Hosker directly behind. 3 outfits separated by just over a second, and Mick Williams out of the action. He's gone to join the sin bin with Mick Lee.
Well, that's the 2nd lap that I've seen Simon Ibbotson struggle coming out of Paddock Bend. It wasn't so bad this time because he's managed to gap them going down into McRae's and out of McRae's. But it just shows that if that is down to a run to the line, that could really be interesting on the final lap, and we're only 2 laps away from that.
And now they're side by side for third, and John Hosker has got the better of Mark Parker. Adrian Ems is safely negotiating the complex.
Very safely. He had both his hands off the handlebars.
It did look like a quite relaxed pace, but the notable thing of lap number 6 is that Mark Parker has dropped behind John Hosker, and Hosker's now going after Ibbotson. The moment he had a sniff of a podium place, John Hosker's picked it up. He's got to try and hold on ahead of Mark Parker now if he wants third position, but he's also got an opportunity to go after Simon Ibbotson, who again, you noticed it on the previous lap coming off Paddock Bend. Ibbotson really doesn't have the pace, and those 3 outfits are still separated by just a second with 2 laps to go.
Yeah, he was wide as well into the first turn. That's thrown him offline for 2 and 3. Not paid too badly out to him. No, it hasn't really had an effect. He's still there in second. There's a lot of puddles on the exit to corners here. If you look out of turn 3, there's a big puddle. Out of turn 4 at McRae's, there's a big puddle. Into Iredale's, all very static now. But Adrian Ems could, if all things stay the same, and we have got a lap and a half to go, will be the only other rider to take a win in this year's F1 Sidecars Championship here.
They're side by side again for third position, and just holding on was John Hosker. Mark Parker managed to get up the inside coming off Iredale's and up to the far end of the circuit as Ibbotson slides it again. That's what I was saying previously about the passenger, the weight counterbalancing and keeping the outfit going in the right direction, because Ibbotson had a proper slide on there coming through the technical sequence of turns, the final sequence of turns. But this time he's got a decent run out of Paddock Bend, and I think that might have settled it in favour of Simon Ibbotson. They come into the final lap. Ibbotson holds second, a new personal best of 1 minute 9.9. John Hosker and Mark Parker on the same pace on that previous lap, still separated by half a second. On the last 2 laps they've been side by side, off McRae's and down to Iredale's. Let's see if things change once again there. Ibbotson's lost a place. Ibbotson loses it coming out of McRae's, and he's passed by the pair, and Parker's going to attempt to come all the way around, and Mark Parker might come from 4th to 2nd here as they come off Iredale's and up to the far end of the circuit.
Yeah, that was really good there. Parker saw an opportunity, absolutely took it. Don't know if he's held on to it. I think he slotted into 3rd place quite nicely, but Ibbotson, he's just thrown away a podium there. Has he got anything left? No, he's well off the back. They're struggling for pace. Down into the final part of this lap, you've got Adrian Ems, he's coming into the final corner. Paddock Bend, it's going to be his. It's going to be the only other winner.
Oh, we've got a spin. We've got a spin, and that is Hosker.
That's another podium thrown away.
To 2nd place. He's ended up back down in 4th, and Ibbotson is given a gift of a 3rd position. And Mark Parker, who attempted to make the pass coming off Iredale's and up to the far end of the circuit, but couldn't quite make it stick, is going to come over the line in 2nd place, and 3rd will go to Simon Ibbotson. John Hosker spinning out within sight of the checkered flag, within touching distance of a podium position, and that 127 outfit will take 4th. Well, that is real wacky races in the Mini F1 sidecars. 8 completed laps and 8 laps of entertainment there. Mick Williams won't believe it, dropping points for the first time in 2017, and it didn't come the way I expected, because in round 6 and 7 you could see that the other outfits had gained on him after really being demolished in the opening 5 rounds of the season. But in the end, his first defeat of the campaign comes as a result of a DNF on lap number 4. Paul Qualters and Mick Lee also failing to finish, and 3 of the top 4 in the championship standings, the only 3 of the top 4 who are present this weekend, retire from the race. Race number 2 in the Mini F1 sidecars. Real chaos there.
What a fiasco. No one wanted that podium place. They all gave it away. Something wrong with it, I think, but Adrian Ems, Mark Parker and Simon Ibbotson will be well and truly thankful. Mick Williams is getting a lift home. He's being pushed back to the pits. Simon Ibbotson being the taxi driver there.
Mini F1 sidecars.
What a race!
We've got to set up a dramatic tandem race at some point in the future in the Mini F1 sidecars. Well, there we go. That is the 5th race of the day completed, the 2nd round in the Mini F1 sidecars. And as I just watch out of the corner of my eye, we've got Mick Lee being pushed around as well now by Adrian Ems, and that is a very unusual lap of honour. The checkered flag, only the 2nd different race winner of 2017, is nudging the outfit that retired on the open opening lap. So
someone's missed their taxi.
The 5th race of the day completed. The 2nd race in the Mini F1 sidecars. Outstanding entertainment, and given the weather conditions and so on, absolutely outstanding efforts all day so far from all 4 of the categories taking place today. Just remember that for those of you tuning in and wondering what's going on with the kids races, of course those will be taking place here tomorrow, the 2nd day of racing. So we've got all 3 rounds of races in the 4 categories: the Mini F1 sidecars, the Moto Team Pit Bike 140, the Pit Bike Open and the Senior Mini Motos. And the junior races will be taking place on the 2nd race day, all 3 rounds of races as well as qualifying. And of course that is just to enable them to get a better chance of getting round the circuit. Quite honestly, we've seen that the wind and the wet weather conditions have made things a little bit perilous. We saw it particularly, Kiko, in the mini bike category, the Senior Mini Motos. They were really struggling to get round, and they had various falls. And then of course the sidecars were all sideways and getting out of shape last time out.
Absolutely treacherous weather, and it's causing havoc, and there's even more bikes in this race here. We've got the Pit Bike 140 motor teams, as you say, coming out for their 2nd race of the day. And you know, just to reiterate, the kids races, effectively, as we could call them, all the classes that aren't taking place today are on tomorrow, weather depending. Because if we have another day like it is today, well, I wouldn't want
Brian, be the parents that have got to tell the kids that Brian has put a stop to the racing.
Of course, we do not have anything against people called Brian, but you know, Hurricane Brian, Storm Brian doesn't have a particularly scary ring to it.
We don't have a Brian in the next race out. Race number 2 in the Pit Bike 140 and Moto Team categories. We return to the grid that we saw for race number 1. James Blackburn and Blake Ansell on the front row, Ben Pascoe and Brandon Perrell on row 2, Sam Clowes and Ian Jackson on row 3. All 6 of those riders were well and truly in the mix first time out. Directly behind those 6, it's Darren Anderson, who was the winner first time out in the Moto Team class. And of course, in terms of the championship, he is also the championship leader there, and I think he is moving a step closer to the championship success just by the absence of Will Howarth, of course, this weekend. He already had a 35-point lead. He had an 89-point lead, an unassailable one to Fraser Kinnaird in 3rd. So Darren Anderson will be your champion in the Moto Team category in 2017, and well, that's all just confirmed by the absence of Will Howarth. So a successful day for Darren Anderson, just by virtue of taking part, which sounds a little bit cynical, but he's done the job. The battle now in terms of Moto Team is for 3rd position in the championship standings between Fraser Kinnaird and Keith Bolton. Kinnaird doing a great job first time out to take 2nd, and Keith Bolton DNFing, so he's now got a lot of work to do in the remaining 2 races here this weekend.
No Blake Ansell on the grid, I don't see. I can't see him. Has he lined
up at the back? Has he lined up at the back to give himself an extra challenge?
I wouldn't be doing this in these conditions, I'll tell you that now. Then again, that's why I'm stood in a nice air-conditioned room and they're out there riding. They probably know more than me.
James Blackburn, the pre-race favourite, won by 4 seconds first time out. Blake Ansell finished 2nd, 4 seconds back, and Sam Clowes finished 3rd. We had 6 riders very much in the mix first time out. Who will be in the mix this time around? We're underway. It was Brandon Perrell I caught sight of starting at the back, so apologies there. Brandon Perrell was making his way through from the very back of the grid. Well, actually, from effectively the penalty line. He was a row back from the back row of the grid.
He was there in 2nd, because he's come up 2nd here.
Has he come over the line?
Yeah.
So, well, I don't know whether that's a bike, a number.
May well,
because it looked like his number out at the back. Well, we'll work it out as they cross the line at the end of lap number 1 for sure. But you're right, the timing screens show Brandon Perrell in 2nd place.
Both 3-digit numbers of Ansell and Perrell, so that might be why. Of course, we can't see all of the circuit from where we are. We are craning our necks for the majority of this, but and
the numbers as well.
Yeah. It's very difficult to see.
James Blackburn, not difficult to see him. No. He has pulled well clear out in front, and some of the Moto Team regulars are keeping up as well. Darren Anderson there is 6th in scratch, so he is the current Moto Team leader. We've got a 4-rider battle, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. You're spot on. Brandon Perrell is on a bike labelled 146. It's there's another bike out there with 146 written on it,
really
Kiko.
Useful,
so
useful.
That would be why
Oh, we've got a mechanical for someone coming out of Sunny Bend. I tell you what, there's nothing shining on him at the moment. That is a disaster that is coming out there. Was it Patrickson? I think that's Patrickson who's retired out of this one. Am I right? Is he even... We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. There's no doubt in your race leader, Blackburn. James Blackburn is well out ahead. Battle for second though, still raging, down to 3 bikes, not 4 now. Second place, Ian Jackson.
Yeah, Sam Clowes has been dropped, but where has he been dropped? Because
has he dropped it
he's
himself?
down at the far end of the circuit.
Stuart
Sam Clowes is down, and well, that's disappointing for him. Blake Ansell is up to 6th position, so wherever Blake Ansell was starting on the grid, he's out there, and he is now up to P6, and is he running 2, 4, 5?
He's down, he's just dropped it.
Down he goes.
Turn 2, another disaster. Oh, Blake Ansell, down he's gone. Bike is still running though. Is he going to try and get that back out? Oh, be careful, don't do it on the racing line. He's up and okay. Everyone else just...
What a chaotic start to the race for Blake Ansell.
We don't know what's going on, apart from Blake Ansell's just dropped it. And he's trying to start it. Has he started it? He's pushed it out the mud and dirt and whatnot.
Tell me something, next time he comes round, try and spot whether he is the other rider on the 146 bike.
I think he is.
We've got 2 riders with the same rider number here.
Moment for, I think in 4th was Darren Anderson. Are we then told that Charlie Nesbitt's... Well, we believe Charlie Nesbitt may be a spoiler in our confusion up here in our commentary room.
Well, as you say, that may explain it. That would also explain why every time that bike passes the line, it's not clocking up, and it would be because he's not got a transponder on. So effectively, you could ignore him out of the race because he won't be classified, he won't be scoring, and he won't be too bothered about where he finishes either.
I think a few other riders may be bothered.
That would explain why he was why that bike with the 146 on it was starting on the penalty line, a row behind the back row.
Absolutely.
And it would also explain why we thought it might have been Brandon Perrell, because he also rides with the 146 number. So that was really helpful. But talking about 146, Brandon Perrell set a new personal best on that previous lap, so he's starting to come back at them, and we've got a real group of riders starting to emerge, a group of 4 now.
Yeah, that must mean that the crasher at turn 2 was not Blake Ansell. It must have been Charlie
Nesbitt. You're spot on. Change of position. Ben Pascoe down the inside of Ian Jackson. Jackson gets hung up to dry coming off paddock bed. He may lose another. Ben Pascoe's down the inside. He does indeed. Jackson drops down from 2nd to 4th. He's going to drop right out of it as Brandon Perrell comes through as well. Chaos going down into turn number 1.
Yeah, that was really close. A big squeeze and another big squeeze down the field. At Sunny Bend, no, sure.
Simon Clowes made a pass. Simon Clowes coming back through the field, and further down the order, that's Scott Dootson. And remember all the dramas that he had first time out, falling in the closing stages. He's not running so well this time around.
Nesbitt into the pits.
Good spot. Charlie Nesbitt, who wasn't classified in the race anyway, is now actually out of the race.
That's what you get when you confuse the commentary team, Charlie.
Curse of the commentator. We've applied it from up here.
The wind's really
it was an uncomfortable fall, it must be said, or it looked an uncomfortable fall anyway. Meanwhile, out in front, James Blackburn, new fastest lap of the race, 59.5, so he's the only rider in this race running sub 1 minute. Blake Ansell up in 2nd position, 13 seconds down on the leader, and as I said previously, Ben Pascoe also getting the better of Ian Jackson, so Jackson dropping down quite dramatically coming off paddock bend. It all got a little bit exciting there, and as I said, Simon Clowes further down the order is in the mix with Alistair Kinnaird up ahead of him.
Indeed.
That's 8th and 9th position. That's 3rd in class.
That's 3rd in class, yes. Just to reference what we can see, we can tell you that the wind is really blowing. The water is being blown across. I just noticed it there, so the wind's picking up. Whether that will have an effect on lap times, sorry, just getting close.
Next probable pass is Sam Clowes on Alistair Kinnaird. I'd said about Clowes making his way through. I think he's already got it, Sam Clowes. He was 5 seconds faster on the previous lap. Remember, Sam Clowes was the rider we saw with a pink helmet up at the far end of the circuit, crashing in the early stages of the race. So he's now back up into the top 10. His current position is worth 6th in class.
Sorry, don't know who that was. Sorry to jump in there. Was that Brandon Perrell? may have well been Brandon Peril. Was definitely
it was
a yellow
one
machine.
of the runners from that group. Ben Pascoe and Ian Jackson are safely over the line. I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's a yellow machine, and I think it's a 146 machine.
Yeah.
We've been chuckling about the number 146
so
all
that's
race.
the more bad luck for that number. And the bike flips over as it hit the dirt, so that's not going to do it any good.
That's another pass further down the order as we see them go side by side. Charlie Nesbitt's now rejoined the race. That's the number 31 of Sam Clowes passing Simon Clowes, and Brandon Peril of course losing out, but it was Alistair Kinnaird who dropped back on that previous lap anyway. So Sam Clowes has made 2 passes in 1 lap there. He passed Alistair Kinnaird early on, he passed Simon Clowes. He's coming at the next group ahead of him though, is 11 seconds up, so I suspect that's as far as Sam Clowes is going to get now. The riders just up ahead of him, Darren Anderson and Fraser Kinnaird, are the leaders in the Moto Team class. He's passed Simon Clowes, who sits 3rd in Moto Team, and Simon Clowes has a bit of a gap now to Alistair Kinnaird, so I suspect that has settled things, but it settled it in quite a dramatic way with that fall, as you said, coming through the final sequence of turns. It was a low side and down, and as the bike caught the dirt, as you said, it flipped it over, and that's why he hasn't been able to rejoin the races yet, Brandon Peril. Yeah,
I think that's it all over. He hasn't got it started yet. Cannot see how he's going to rejoin. He's well down. Oh, he has got it started, so just as I say that.
And amusingly, he's ended up right behind Charlie Nesbitt on the track.
There he is, look, just coming through Sunny Bend on an aptly yellow bike. But no, I think he's got a problem, and that will be the end of a challenge for Brandon
look fairly
Peril.
terminal,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he's dropped, I think, 2 laps in the time that he was trying to rectify that anyway, as the focus at the moment has to be on the battle for 3rd position. New personal best on lap 7 for Ian Jackson, who's closed up further on Ben Pascoe. They are line astern now, one behind the other, as Jackson attempts to recover positions. Remember, Jackson ran 2nd in the early part of the race before losing 2 positions. Blake Ansell has since consolidated 2nd, but the fight's still very much on over 3rd place. Ben Pascoe and Ian Jackson trading times here, each setting a new personal best on lap number 8, dropping further back then the first runners in the Moto Team class, Darren Anderson, Fraser Kinnaird and Simon Clowes. Clowes with a big margin over Alistair Kinnaird that's continuing to get bigger, and Scott Dudson even further back. They really are going at it though for 3rd position now.
Someone's dropped it down at McRae's, so the yellow flag is out there. Don't know who that is. They've definitely crashed because the bike is parked up nicely in the barriers. Not sure who that is. We're going to find out shortly, I would imagine.
As they come through then,
is it Pascoe?
Further down the order, 4th and 5th positions in the Moto Team class. Alistair Kinnaird and Scott Dudson is the first of the lap runners now in 10th position. James Blackburn has come through to complete lap number 9.
Because I think Ian Jackson's gone down as well just before Sunny Bend. Exactly the same kind of crash as Brandon Peril had.
Thankfully for him though, it wasn't quite as early in the turn, so the bike didn't get caught in that trench, as you put it earlier. You're spot on. Ian Jackson going down, so attempting to close in on Ben Pascoe. Ian Jackson has fallen. The good news for him is he had an 18.5 second gap behind him, and so that means that he maintains 4th position.
Exactly. I think they call that bend just after it's Sunny Bend. The amount of people have gone down there, you could call it Perilous Corner just before.
Well, ironically, that is the ambulance station up at the top of that hill, which is looking quite fortuitous the way things have gone.
Yes, it's a little bit inviting
so far this weekend. But it was the same last time we were here in Rowrah earlier this season, round number 3, remember, back in May. And the vast majority of the accidents either happened going through the Stewart-Esses at the far end of the circuit, or they happened through the final sequence of turns.
And we're absolutely seeing a replica of that this weekend as well. Blackburn and Ansell, just to remind you, have crossed the line. They are on their 10th lap. There's only 2 to go. It's Blackburn, Ansell, Pascoe. Jackson is in 4th.
And then in terms of the Moto Team class, Darren Anderson, Fraser Kinnaird and Simon Clowes. Alistair Kinnaird, the first of the lap runners, is down in 9th position. A couple of changes just outside of the top 10, but that's of course been brought on by all of the incidents that we've had, all the fallers. And
Max Bartle 10th. So
interestingly, Sam Clowes, who had to come through, Max Bartle coming through, as you said, for 10th position. That moves him to 6th in class. I was just about to say Sam Clowes, a new personal best. He was the fastest rider of anyone on that previous lap, but he did have 18 seconds or so to make up if he wanted to make up any further progress. He's got that down to 14 seconds, but he's not going to make too much further progress from there, although I've said that before, and then there were 2 retirements, so you just never know. Bartels made another position now, but it's a position, he moves into 9th place on track, but that's not a move in class, of course, and just watching them filter their way through.
Yep, we're on the last lap now. Oh, someone else has gone down.
Another faller.
Don't know who that is.
I wonder whether that was Fraser Kinnaird or someone around. No, was that Ian Jackson again? Was that Ian Jackson again? I think that may have been Ian Jackson coming down. No, it wasn't. No, false alarm. Darren Anderson, Fraser Kinnaird safely through. So who else could it have been? A lapped runner, it has to have been. He's about to get some assistance from another of the riders who fell there earlier. Well, no, that was that Brandon Perrell giving him some assistance there, having fallen on that turn himself earlier in the race.
James Blackburn has won the race, though. We can confirm that. He has crossed the line.
That's the only thing we can confirm.
That's nice and safely done for James Blackburn. It's so consistent. Under 1 minute 1 lap times last time around. Blake Ansell takes 2nd very well, and Ben Pascoe will come home for 3rd place, hopefully.
Well, that moves James Blackburn a step closer to 2nd in the championship. His main rival coming into this round was Ben Pascoe. Brandon Perrell and Sam Clowes were also in contention, but they haven't been consistent enough. Ben Pascoe comes over the line in 3rd. The top 3 separated by 27 seconds, so quite a big margin between the top 3. Ian Jackson, after that fall earlier in the race, a false alarm about what I thought was a 2nd fall, but turned out to be one of the lap runners. Jackson comes over the line 20 seconds back. No wonder I thought that it might have been him that had fallen, finishing 20 seconds further back from the pack. A new personal best on the final lap from Darren Anderson as he takes 5th position. He's the winner in the Moto Team class for a 2nd time, ahead of Fraser Kinnaird, who will take 2nd again in the Moto Team class. A change in 3rd position in the Moto Team with Simon Clowes this time making it up into the podium. But in terms of the pit bike 140s, it's James Blackburn leading home Blake Ansell as it was in race number 1. This time, though, Ben Pascoe improving on a 6th position finish first time out and taking 3rd in race number 2.
It's the rundown of the top 10 then, on track anyway. James Blackburn, Blake Ansell and Ben Pascoe are your rostrum finishers. Ian Jackson, Darren Anderson, Fraser Kinnaird, Sam Clowes, Simon Clowes, Max Bartle, and rounding out the top 10, Alistair Kinnaird. What a hectic race.
Well, there we go then. Moving on, next will be the pit bike open category. The 3rd of 4 races in round number 2, of course, of the action here today. And then we'll be on to the senior mini motos. A reminder that in the pit bike open category, it's Max Cook already confirmed as champion, Charlie Nesbitt already confirmed as runner-up. So what we've been focusing on is the fight for 3rd in the series standings. And in terms of that fight for 3rd in the series standings, recalling the first race, it was Callum Wybrow who took an important 2nd position to move up, and very much in contention now for 3rd place, or looking good for 3rd place. He's got to try and hold off Jack Qualters, who had a series of falls and ended up finishing in 6th position, and he's also got to hold off Elliot Pinson, who had a good effort first time out. Pinson well back though in terms of the championship standings. He only has participated in the first 2 rounds of the season so far. So in the series standings then, it's Max Cook who leads the way. It's Charlie Nesbitt, who won first time out, who is confirmed as the series runner-up. And Callum Wybrow is looking a shoe-in for 3rd in the series standings if he can beat Jack Walters again, as he did first time out. Brandon Payne is the other rider in contention. Craig Walker a little bit further adrift, came into this final round down in 11th position as the riders spill out onto the circuit now, making their way round towards the grid. We only had 6 finishers first time out. We had a DNF for Luke Coggins, but it looks as though Coggins is back on the track and will resume his role in the action. We are down to 6 runners though, by my reckoning. So is that who is the rider that we are missing?
We are looking.
Charlie Nesbitt's there.
Nesbitt's still
Callum
there.
Wybrow, Elliot Pinson, Craig Walker is there. Brandon Payne. And so it's Brandon Payne who hasn't clocked up.
Well,
we'll have to see if he's out there.
He has had a few
was due
crashes.
to start on the front row of the grid, Brandon Payne, in P2.
Yeah, like we say, he's had a couple of crashes though in other races, so maybe he's just had enough for today, I think. He's all the bad luck. But interesting you mentioned Elliot Pinson there, 14th he is in the championship. He could actually get all the way up to around 8th. Brandon Payne's not racing this one, so he could get up to 8 if results go his way.
Or more, potentially. But that's going to very much depend on how things unfold here. I'm just watching them settle into position to see if Brandon Payne makes a last-minute dart out from the pit lane and onto the track, because this is a critical time in the championship, because he is still in contention, Brandon Payne, for a place in the top 3, but I don't think he's going to make it.
No, I don't think he's going to make it, but that means that Callum Wybrow has a bit of an advantage to take that 3rd if things go his way, which they should, as long as he stays upright on 2 wheels.
Yeah, it'll be between him and Jack Qualters, and Qualters, remember, didn't qualify, so he's got to start from the back. So Callum Wybrow is the rider to watch here as he attempts to confirm 3rd in the championship. We are underway. It was a good start from Wybrow, a better one than it was for Pinson, who slots into 3rd position. But the early race leaders with Charlie Nesbitt. Yeah,
Nesbitt playing with the bike there on the grid. Just, he's so cool at these kind of things, and already he's got a bit of a margin out front. Wybrow 2nd, Elliot Pinson 3rd, and that would be great for Elliot Pinson. That would really, like we was alluding to in the first part of this before we got underway, that would do his championship a load of good. He'd rocket up the order.
Jack Qualters has made up a position as well, so Qualters coming through. I think it's Luke Coggins that he's relegated to the back, so that keeps things interesting in terms of the series standings. As we said previously, the riders taking part this weekend are quite spaced out in terms of the points tallies, but with Callum Wybrow coming into this weekend 5th, he's now 4th in the championship. Is Charlie Nesbitt playing with his food? He's ended up behind Callum Wybrow up at the far end of the circuit, and now he's going to go wider into Paddock Bend. He's going to cut back up the inside, perhaps coming down the start-finish straight. He's looking over his shoulder. He's looking for a game, isn't he, Charlie Nesbitt?
Nesbitt wants to prove to people that he doesn't just win from the front, but he can win in a battle. He's really close to Callum Wybrow coming through turn number 3.
He's going down the inside, and through he goes.
Parks it. Beautiful move. Does he get it squared up? Always wheelie in there. Well, be careful. I
think that's a wheelie for fun rather than a wheelie for excess traction, because in these weather conditions I'd find that unlikely. Nesbitt finding his way back through for the race lead. Callum Wybrow clocked up as the fastest on the previous lap. Has he gone past him, or has he been encouraged through? What do you think?
Yeah, given, lended, loaned, who knows?
Well, either way, it's enabling Elliot Pinson to stay with them as these two mess around and swap and change positions. We've got a real fight on for 4th. Jack Qualters has come through. Qualters has come through at the expense of Craig Walker. That's Walker then who has dropped down to 5th position, and Luke Coggins is still with them. So we've got 2 races in 1. We've got a pack of 3 riders from 4th down to 6th, and obviously we've got the lead group from 1st to 3rd. The fastest of that trio on the previous lap was Elliot Pinson, who sits 3rd, and they're now separated by just over a second as Nesbitt backs off at the last moment out of a move of trying to pass Callum Wybrow. He's going to have a go down the inside into Iredale's instead. Again, he stands it up and backs out of that move. So it's Callum Wybrow who leads from Charlie Nesbitt in 2nd. Nesbitt looking over his shoulder and waving to the riders behind him as he comes off Iredale's. The rider directly behind him is Elliot Pinson. Pinson was the fastest of the 3 of them on that previous lap. Their time separated by just over 0.2 of a second on lap number 2. It looks as though Pinson has dropped a little bit back from Charlie Nesbitt on this lap, though. Although, just as I say that, they come through the twisty stuff and the accordion effect brings him closer.
It's like race 1 all over again. Pinson's good through the corners but loses out through the straight. I mean, Nesbitt may well be playing with us, playing with them, but he makes great racing for us to look at and commentate on, and that's a great thing, especially in this weather. You know, it's hard to find fun when you're being blown around all over the paddock and being submerged in water, but you know, it could be worse. Nesbitt back to the front. Will he hold it? Does he want to hold it?
I'm also watching out for this race between Jack Qualters and Craig Walker. Walker's
Sorry to come across you there, Alex. Pinson's gone through. He took 2nd place off of Callum Wybrow. I think again all a bit fed up with Charlie Nesbitt's.
Well, that's really interesting, because Wybrow dropping from 1st to 3rd means that he is only 1 position ahead of championship rival Jack Qualters now. The pair of them were separated by 3 points coming into this final round. So that's where the race is for 3rd in the championship. Qualters minimising the deficit, although Qualters has been passed. Qualters has lost out. Walker has recovered 4th position. The riders are squirming coming in now. That's the rain, that's the standing water sitting on the racing line, the rubbered in line on the inside, and making it really treacherous. And sometimes they're going in and they're just sliding across the apex of the turn altogether, or wobbling where you wonder whether they're going to hold on to it. Coulters has dropped to 5th, then Walker comes through. New fastest lap of the race from Elliot Pinson, and that's what enabled him to get the better of Callum Wybrow.
Yeah, and the rain is lashing down now. It looks a lot heavier out there. So that, like you alluded to, Alex, means there's more standing water, means everyone's a little bit more careful and precarious going into them corners. And I think, from looking at him, Jack Coulters was like that, going down into turn 6 there just before Sunny Bend. He just looked a little bit more on edge, shall we say. Didn't want to chuck it all away. These front two have escaped though. Nesbitt and Pinson are going head to head. Callum Wybrow has been dropped, but he's a little bit distant of them two, but he's miles ahead of 4th place. Wybrow 3rd.
Well, you pointed out that Elliot Pinson down in 14th in the championship coming into this race weekend. Of course, he's only taken part in 2 of the rounds, which is why he finds himself so far adrift. But with another big points haul, he will doubtless move up into the top 10 at very least. And if he takes the checkered flag, I'm sure just the pride of winning the race would be glorious enough for him. Charlie Nesbitt with a new fastest lap on lap 5, but there's still more than half of this race to go as Luke Coggins gains on Jack Coulters. So you said that Coulters looked pretty tentative. He really has lost out. He's dropped 3 seconds just on that lap to Craig Walker. Now 3.2 seconds in back from Craig Walker overall, and Luke Coggins 7/10 of a second right on his tail. So we could have a real fight on for 5th position, even if the battle for 1st and 2nd looks like a game in Nesbitt's control. Yeah,
Nesbitt, he's just managing the gap really. I don't think he's even bothered if he was to get past, because he knows he has the capabilities to do exactly the same to Pinson, shall Pinson try. The gap up to half a second. New fastest lap from Charlie Nesbitt, 57.3 compared to Elliot Pinson's 57.4. But it's Nesbitt, Pinson, Wybrow, your top 3. Behind them, Walker, Coulters and Coggins, but they are all very, very distant. Don't look like they can challenge for a rostrum in this race. They have one more later on, of course.
Jack Coulters and Luke Coggins still close together, still 7/10 of a second between them. Coggins held up slightly, I would suspect, by Jack Coulters on that previous lap, because he was running faster until he gained on Coulters, and now that he's within a second of him, he's been able to find no way through. By contrast, Elliot Pinson has set his new personal best whilst running up on the tail of Charlie Nesbitt, so he's obviously learning and gaining from following directly behind someone, in this case Charlie Nesbitt, who's running out in front. Pinson going in a little bit harder there into Paddock Bend. Nesbitt looking over his shoulder, just making sure he knows where Pinson is, and it's a new fastest lap of the race from Elliot Pinson, a 57.2. So it's, as I said, Elliot Pinson, by having what you called a reference point earlier on, being able to follow a rider of the quality of Charlie Nesbitt, Elliot Pinson now sets the fastest lap of the race.
Very much like, if you look in the British Superbikes, Bradley Ray seems to be able to do it. Latch onto the back of a fast rider, get towed up, and it's that kind of qualities that you can learn at grassroots racing. Elliot Pinson doing just that. Okay, it was fractionally quicker than Charlie Nesbitt, but was quicker. The gap has extended. I can see that as they go down through the Stewart-S's now, round and back towards the end of this lap. Nesbitt has made a break for it. Pinson and holding second. He's under no...
Oh, we got a fall.
There's Pinson.
It's Pinson. Elliot Pinson has gone down. What a disaster for him. Charlie Nesbitt doesn't know what to do. He was having fun playing there. But that is going to release Callum Wybrow coming through now into 2nd place. Charlie Nesbitt didn't know whether to wait as he came off. He thought, if he's close, I might wait for him and carry on this sparring. But that will mean that Elliot Pinson, who was running 2 seconds a lap faster, is now going to have to make up ground, and we'll see how much ground he's going to have to make up. If he runs 2 seconds a lap faster with 4 laps remaining, that's 8 seconds, but the gap looks like it's going to be much more than that, because he's still stranded out there.
Did I say just before we went in, Pinson hold second?
Curse of the commentator once again.
I do apologise on my second commentary.
Jack Coulters
of this season
coming through in 4th position, ahead of Luke Coggins still. That gap remaining largely static, but Coulters opening it slightly on that previous lap.
Nesbitt could afford to help young Elliot Pinson if he wanted to.
He could stop, get him going again.
I think he's just slowing down on purpose. As a nice little look. Yeah, we'll leave him.
He's got the best view of the track of anyone while he watches the race unfolding. But it looks like everything's settled now, barring that race for 4th and 5th positions. Jack Walters versus Luke Coggins.
Just shows you what Charlie Nesbitt can do to the opposition, though. Makes a nice, conservative race and puts everyone else under pressure. Elliot Pinson obviously trying to stay with Nesbitt because he wants to win just as much as anyone else, and tuck the front down into that St John's corner.
Pinson's just making his way up into the pits now, which means that he won't be classified. If he could have continued on round and got the checkered flag, he would have at least picked up some points, but it's going to be a DNF for him. Still the race for 4th position ongoing, and it's closed up on that lap. 0.4 of a second, the gap between Jack Walters in 4th position and Luke Coggins in 5th, so that's where the race is going to be. Coggins, though, has been unable to find a way past so far in this race, as those two gradually drop back from the lead trio that have 24 seconds separating them. I think the top 3 are settled. It's Walters versus Coggins for 4th position.
Nesbitt has got it so sorted, though. Well out in front. He's dropped his times now by over a second. Side by side
further down the order. Walters holds the line. Coggins got a good run off Iredale's up to the outside and holding the inside. Jack Walters manages to hold on to 4th position. So I've said that that's where the race is really going on in terms of potential position changes. And apologies for cutting over you, but it got side by side there up at the far end of the circuit, and Walters had to maintain his ground well. The pair of them now working their way through Paddock Bend. Walters going for a wider line into Paddock Bend and holds on to the position. I did say that Pinson would need to take the checkered flag if he wanted to be a classified runner. He's back up and running now. He's 2 laps down, but he looks set to take 6th position as long as he finishes.
Absolutely, and as long as no one else crashes ahead of him or has a problem ahead of him. Like you said, though, that the battle between Jack Walters and Luke Coggins well underway, spaced out now as they go up to Iredale's, but apart from that, we've got a lap to go. Well, a lap and a half for them guys. Nesbitt on his last lap, he can just flick it through here out onto the straight. He's got this one sorted. Likewise for Callum Wybrow, as long as he doesn't do anything daft, he'll hold on to 2nd place. Across the line he comes to start his last lap, and the next one will be Craig Walker. Look at that battle there, though. Coggins has really closed up through the Stuart S's down into St John's. Will he have a look? Will he set it up?
Goes for a wider line for sure, but he can't quite do anything. See, it looks to me as though he's having to back off more than he wants to through the technical stuff, because Walters is holding the inside line. There's no way through. And Coggins a little bit more racecraft. He might have been able to find a way through because he's clearly faster. But again, another lap goes by, and it's another lap where Luke Coggins just has to watch the tail of Jack Walters, and Walters actually pulled out a bit of a margin coming through Paddock Bend. That margin has been eaten up. The checkered flag falling, meanwhile, out in front for Charlie Nesbitt. Charlie Nesbitt wins it ahead in 2nd place of Callum Wybrow, and Craig Walker will pick up 3rd after the earlier fall for Elliot Pinson. Pinson is still running, remember, and running 2 laps down, so he will take 6th position as long as he sees the checkered flag at the end of this lap. But looking further back for that race for 4th position, it is still Jack Walters who holds on ahead of Luke Coggins. Wybrow now comes over the line, 18.5 seconds down on Charlie Nesbitt. Here comes Jack Walters. Will he hold on to 4th position? It looks like it. And if anything, Luke Coggins has backed it off.
Yeah, definitely.
But where is Craig Walker?
Craig Walker is gone missing on that track. Is he?
Either he's gone missing on the timing or he's gone missing on the circuit.
Looking for yellow flags, can't see any, but 3rd
over the line is Jack Walters. Luke Coggins next over the line. So I was focusing on what I thought was the battle for 4th, but it's going to end up turning into the battle for 3rd. Craig Walker completed the penultimate lap,
and Elliot Pinson,
but he hasn't completed the final lap, that's for sure. Elliot Pinson needs to cross the line, of course, to be classified in 6th position.
Can't see any yellow flags out, so maybe he's...
But it could be 5th position. If Walker doesn't finish this race, it will be 5th position.
I think Pinson's just gone in.
Pinson's not too bothered about scoring points for 6th place in the race by the looks of it, so it seems we're going to end this race with only 4 finishers, Nesbitt, Wybrow, Walters and Coggins. Just an announcement for the paddock to inform you that podiums for today's races will be taking place at the end of proceedings here today. So, of course, we've got 4 races, more or less, back-to-back and constantly returning to the previous categories that we've already seen, just the way things are now structured, with the junior races taking place tomorrow. But the podium proceedings for today's racing will all take place at the end of today's closure, which will be at the end of the 3rd round of races, of course. Race number 2 in the pit bike open category complete. We've got the senior mini motos still to come in round number 2.
All things looking interesting now. I think, for this next race we have coming up, because who is it going to be? That's what I know. We had a lot of incidents in the last race. I wonder if we're going to see a little bit more racecraft. Now they've worked out track conditions a little bit. They haven't evolved too much. So I think that this race we could see a bit closer, because there's less unpredictability, and I think people will be a little bit more cautious. Those who were good in race 1 will be good again in race 2. But
well, we saw Nick Bennett had the outright pace, but he got it all wrong at the first turn. And, well, I say he got it all wrong. They sandwiched him and he ended up running off the circuit. Then he had to work really hard from the back. He might have a second opportunity now, of course, as he starts on pole position. So you're spot on. The results of race number 1 may well have no bearing whatsoever on race 2, particularly if we end up with the volume of incidents that we had first time out. But I'm pleased to say we have all 7 riders who took part in race 1 back out on track for race 2. So the half a dozen falls and the mechanical problems we saw for Josh Data, well, all 7 of them will take to the track for another 8 laps of wacky races here, race number 2 for the senior mini motos. A reminder of the grid then: Nick Bennett starts on pole, alongside him Brandon Payne. Second row of the grid, Mark Payne and Josh Data. Row 3, Justin Bainbridge and Matt Birkin, and the lone rider off the back row of the grid, Ryan Grant, starts in P7. Now remember, in the first staging we saw Nick Bennett slow away from the line. A good start from Mark Payne and from Brandon Payne as well, trapped him in the run down to the first turn. Nick Bennett will be keen for a faster start this time around.
Absolutely, and he'll be keen to stay on it as well. Don't forget he crashed at the final corner at Paddock Bend and then ended up hurting himself in a delicate area. So hopefully he can remain there, because we thought we'd have a race there between the leaders at the front, but it wasn't to be, because Bennett dropped it in that final corner. All the riders are just lining up now. I think we are waiting for one yet, but I don't know who that is who we're actually waiting for. It's the 4th place man on the grid. That would make it Josh Data. So Data's just trialling round now, just getting into Sunny Bend, not a long way to go.
Was that a fall or a mechanical?
I'm not sure.
Or
I
did he
think he looks okay. The bike looks fine, so maybe he's just had a very slow warm-up lap. We will wait and see. The grid is more or less ready now as he comes to take up his 4th place on the grid. Will he be able to have the same thing? Because Josh Dart was a prominent feature in the first race. Red flag raised, now taken away. Watch the lights, and we will have a start now as they get underway. Good start, everyone away cleanly. Front row gets a good start. Looks like Bennett holds it into the first turn. No, he doesn't. Brandon Payne comes across, I believe. So through the first corner, no such sandwiching this time. It is Brandon Payne who leads. Nick Bennett is second. Has he got back up to the lead? I think Nick Bennett has got back up to the lead. Yes, he has, coming into McRae, so he has got back into the lead. Everyone's still upright so far. It is Nick Bennett, Brandon Payne, Mark Payne, Josh Data, Justin Bainbridge, Matt Birkin and Ryan Grant. That is your leaderboard as they head down to Stuart Esses for the first time.
Up to the far end of the circuit then, close for second and third positions in particular, and then a bit of a gap behind the top 4, and the leader's gone down.
No, he's run off circuit. Nick Bennett was on the grass. He went grass tracking a moment there, so Nick Bennett has gone off circuit. That is coming out the Stuart Esses. So again, Nick Bennett throws away a chance to really feature at the front of this race. For now,
as
anyway.
Justin Bainbridge fights with Josh Data over 5th position. Bainbridge was down the inside with Data offline, and Nick Bennett looks a bit vulnerable here to Justin Bainbridge, from Nick Bennett, who was significantly faster than anyone else on the track. 1.5 seconds faster than the race leader. Just trying to spot whether Bennett has made up any further positions. He hasn't so far on this lap.
He's on the inside